talk about a massive, massive disappointment within its own film. Let's get to it. How we doing, everybody? This is Let's Be Real Brad, and today I'll be talking about the remake to the 1990s The Craft, which is now the sequel called Blumhouse's The Craft Legacy. So before I start getting into this review, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It means the world to me. You guys are liking my videos. Subscribe to my channel. You guys are the best. This film just disappointed itself in its own movie. This movie starts off so extremely well, and it is so good for the first half, and the second half completely falls apart, and it becomes just a horrible, messy, executed film. Let's start off with the positives here. I love the change in the story. I love how they finally just changed the story for some remake of an old property. They just gave a brand new story. They kept the elements that people really enjoyed about the original property, and then they just changed it. This is a completely new and original story with a brand new cast, and I thought it worked so perfectly well, and it's so well set up in this movie. The first maybe 40 minutes of this movie, 45 minutes, was very good. I feel like I was well invested with the characters, and the movie really focuses more on the emotional themes and the characters being the forefront of the film, which a really good movie should. And it had that unpredictability that you didn't really know where this movie was going to go. But I feel as though that they have this nice chemistry and camaraderie together, that they work so well on screen, and you can believe that they're all friends because it feels like they've been best friends, and maybe they were, who knows, maybe the actresses were, but I feel like they were the standouts in this film. I really like the edginess that this movie had. It feel like it just went full force and just did not care. This movie is definitely a 2020 very progressive film with very progressive themes that I did particularly like, and I thought it was something that wasn't necessarily shoved in your face, but it was something that felt like it was important, that had something to say, and it used this horror film to talk about some of the horrors that some people have to face. And there's one character that they do an awesome job with in this film, and they really do expand on this character, and it goes ways you do not expect for this character to go. And I thought that was probably the biggest positive I could give this film. But I gotta say, this movie really was a disappointment in the second half. And the reason for this is we'll start off little by little. And that is because of the direction. The direction is absolutely boring throughout the whole movie. There's so many shot selections that are just panning to one character, back to another character, and they do the same exact shots. If you guys don't know much about shot selection in film, just watch this film and just pay attention of how the camera is framed on a character and what they do to go back. It literally repeats itself. The movie has such a messy execution, whereas I feel as though the first half set up so many things so well, and then the second half just ruins everything that they built up, and they go different ways that just don't feel like that they were executed in the best ways possible. There's so many cheesy and bad CGI moments that are used in the third act and the climax of the film that don't particularly work for me. The movie tries to be all dark and intense and feels scary, and you just don't feel that at all because none of those scary moments were ever even mentioned in the beginning of the film. For maybe one time there was one tension-filled scene, and everything else was piss poor bad. Now that third act is so awful. I think it might be one of the worst third acts I have particularly seen in a very long time, and it was very, very disappointing. And considering it just feels like, because the Blumhouse film, they had to make this the horror elements, because there really is no horror in this movie, so they just throw it into this movie, and it feels so stupid. I just almost wish they cut out that entire section because it is really cheesy. It's corny. The way the action shots are directed are really bad. And to be honest, I think I could have just done without it. I think this movie should have just been a drama the whole entire time. But it tries to commit itself as the horror film that it is because the original one was a supernatural horror film. But it never works that way at all. So I don't know if that's because it's under Blumhouse and they still have to throw it in there and it's owned by Sony and they want to do a standalone sequel. I don't know what happened, but I felt very appalled watching this third act, and I think a lot of you are going to hate it as well. I think there's so many good things that they do in this movie and are well accomplished, and I felt like I was having a really good time watching a fresh new story with interesting characters that they may not always be completely developed, but likable and charming enough that kept me invested throughout the whole film, and I wanted to see what they were going to do with these characters, and ended up being a ginormous mess that just didn't seem like it could come back to itself. And very last 30 seconds are really cool, and I was not expecting that, as they do throw something in that ties to the ending a little bit in the second half of the film that felt very shoehorned in. I don't know why they just threw this in all of a sudden, but it did make up for it being in the last 30 seconds. That was really awesome. I don't want to say anything about it. Really cool. So I think I'm going to give this film a solid 4 out of 10. So have you guys seen The Craft Legacy? I know it just came out. Are you guys looking forward to it? Do you guys really enjoy the original film? I want to know all those things down below. And as always, I'll see you guys next video.